Please,
in the glittering
sir,
heart of
help me.
Manhattan,
I am
where
so
skyscrapers
hungry.
pierce the sky
Just a
like
little
diamonds on a
change,
velvet
please.
night.
Have
Alexander
mercy.
Voss strode through the bustling streets
Look
like a
closely at
king
this
among
photograph. Does this
pawns.
look familiar
At
to you?
42,
He is your
he was the
son.
epitome of ruthless success.
God.
A
It can't
tech
be. I don't
billionaire whose
understand.
empire spanned AI innovations that reshaped industries overnight. His tailored suit whispered of old money and new conquests. His watch alone worth more than most people's homes. But beneath that polished facade simmered a storm of unresolved pain, a childhood scar that no amount of wealth could heal. The mysterious disappearance of his mother when he was just a boy. Picture this. It's a crisp autumn evening, the kind where the city's lights dance on the Hudson like fallen stars. Alexander is rushing to a high-stakes gala, his mind racing with mergers and market dominations. Suddenly, a ragged figure shuffles into his path, a homeless woman, her clothes tattered like forgotten dreams, her eyes hollow yet strangely piercing. She reaches out with a trembling hand, murmuring pleas for spare change, her voice a fragile echo lost in the urban roar. Irritated, Alexander halts, his patience fraying like cheap thread. "Get out of my way," he snaps, raising his hand in a flash of anger. The slap poised connect with her weathered cheek. The crowd around them gasps, phones already out to capture the scandal. But in that electrifying split second, another voice slices through the tension like a blade. "Don't slap her. She's your missing mother." The words come from a second homeless woman, emerging from the shadows of a nearby alley. She's slight but fierce, her gaze locked on Alexander with an intensity that stops him cold. Her name is Elara, a wanderer with secrets etched into her soul, and in her hand, she clutches a faded photograph that could unravel everything. Alexander's hand freezes midair, his world tilting on its axis. The first woman, the one he nearly struck, looks up, her eyes widening in a flicker of recognition that sends chills down his spine. Who was this intervener? How could she possibly know about his mother, vanished 2 decades ago in a swirl of rumors and heartache? As the onlookers murmur and circle closer, Elara steps forward, her voice steady despite the chaos. "I've been watching over her for years, Mr. Voss. She's not just any stranger on the street. Her name is Lydia, your Lydia. And if you walk away now, you'll lose her forever, again." Alexander's heart pounds like a war drum. Memories flood back. The warm lullabies, the scent of lavender from her hugs, the night she vanished without a trace, leaving him a father who drowned his grief in boardrooms and bottles. Investigators had turned up nothing. Kidnapping? Amnesia? Foul play? The case went cold, and Alexander built his fortress of fortune to bury the void. But here, in the unforgiving glare of streetlights, doubt creeps in. He lowers his hand, staring at the woman before him. Her face, lined with hardship, bears an uncanny resemblance to the faded photos in his penthouse safe. Could it be? Or was this some elaborate scam, a con artist's ploy to extort a billionaire? Elara doesn't flinch under his scrutiny. "Proof," she says simply, unfolding the photograph. It's yellowed with age, showing a young Lydia holding a toddler Alexander. Their smiles identical. On the back, scrawled in familiar handwriting, "My little king forever." The billionaire's breath catches. He gestures for a security detail to hold back the growing crowd, his voice a low growl. "Who are you? How do you have this?" Elara's eyes, sharp as a hawk's, meet his. "I'm the one who found her wandering the streets 10 years ago, memories shattered like glass. No name, no past, just fragments of a life she couldn't piece together. I pieced it for her. And now for you." As sirens wail in the distance, perhaps called by a concerned bystander, Alexander feels the ground shift beneath him. He could dismiss them, walk away to his gallon of champagne and deals. Or he could dive into this rabbit hole, risking his empire on a homeless woman's word. Tentatively, he extends a hand to Lydia, who hesitates, her fingers brushing as like a ghost from the past. "Mom," he whispers, the word foreign yet achingly familiar. Elara nods, a faint smile breaking through her guarded expression. "There's more to this story than you know, Alexander. Your mother's disappearance wasn't an accident. It was orchestrated by someone close to you, someone who stood to gain from her absence." His mind reels. His father? A business rival? The implications crash over him like waves as they move toward his waiting limo. Shielding Lydia from the flashing cameras, Elara leans in. But to uncover the truth, you'll have to trust me. And that starts with getting her off these streets. Tonight, inside the opulent vehicle, the city blurs past as Alexander grapples with the impossible. Lydia sits quietly, her eyes darting between them, fragments of memory stirring like leaves in the wind. "Alex," she murmurs softly, her voice cracking with emotion. He nods, tears unbidden in his eyes, a vulnerability he hasn't shown in years. Elara, seated across, begins to unravel the tale. How she, a former investigative journalist fallen on hard times, stumbled upon Lydia in a shelter, recognized her from old news clippings, and vowed to protect her until the right moment. But as they approach his towering penthouse, a shadow looms. Elara's phone buzzes with an anonymous text. "Stop digging, or she'll disappear for good." Who was watching? And what dark secrets from Alexander's past were about to resurface? The elevator door slid open directly into the penthouse, a cavern of glass and marble that overlooked the city like a throne room suspended in the sky. Alexander stepped out first, guiding Lydia gently by the elbow as if she were made of porcelain. She moved with hesitant steps, eyes wide at the expanse of wealth around her. The sleek black grand piano no one ever played. The Rothko on the wall worth more than most countries' annual budgets. The floor-to-ceiling windows framing Central Park like a private painting. Elara followed close behind, her worn boots leaving faint traces of street grime on the pristine Italian stone. Alexander's staff had been dismissed for the evening. He had texted his housekeeper en route, instructing her to take the night off. Privacy was paramount now. He led them to the living area, where a fire crackled in a fireplace that cost more than a house. Lydia paused at the threshold, clutching the threadbare coat Elara had draped over her shoulders in the limo. This place," Lydia whispered, voice trembling. "It feels like I've dreamed it." Alexander's throat tightened. He gestured to the plush sectional sofa. "Please sit, both of you." He shrugged off his suit jacket, tossing it over a chair, suddenly aware of how ostentatious everything must look to them. He poured 3 glasses of water from a crystal decanter, nothing stronger, not yet, and handed them out. Lydia took the glass with both hands, as though afraid she might drop it. Her gaze drifted to a framed photograph on the mantel, a 10-year-old Alexander in a school uniform, standing stiffly beside a beautiful woman with auburn hair and the same sharp green eyes he saw in the mirror every morning. Lydia's breath hitched audibly. "That's you," she said softly, pointing with a shaking finger. "My Alex." Alexander felt the floor tilt again. He crossed the room in 3 strides and took the photo down, bringing it to her. She traced the glass over the younger version of her face with reverence, tears slipping silently down weathered cheeks. Elara remained standing, watchful, her back to the windows. The anonymous text still glowed in her mind. She scanned the room instinctively for cameras, bugs, anything out of place. Years on the street had honed her paranoia into something close to prescience. Alexander sat opposite his mother. No, the woman who might be his mother, and leaned forward. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." Elara exhaled slowly. "It starts 20 years ago, the night Lydia disappeared. The official story was that she left voluntarily. A note, a suitcase, an affair no one could prove. Your father pushed that narrative hard. Paid off detectives, buried leads. But I know better." Alexander's jaw tightened. His father, Victor Voss, had died 5 years earlier, leaving the empire and a mountain of unspoken regrets to his only son. Victor had never spoken of Lydia after the first year, as if erasing her name could erase the pain. "I was a junior reporter back then," Elara continued, "assigned to society pages, but I had ambitions. When the Voss heiress vanished, it was the story of the decade. I dug where others wouldn't. Found witnesses who saw a black town car outside the state that night. Plates registered to a shell company owned by Voss Industries. Found a nurse at a private clinic in Connecticut who treated a woman matching Lydia's description for head trauma 2 days later. Amnesia induced by blunt force," she said, "but every lead dried up. Money has a way of doing that." Lydia listened with furrowed brow, fragments flickering behind her eyes. I remember lights, bright lights, and pain. Then nothing. Waking up in a hospital bed with no name. Alexander's fists clenched. My father did this? Elara shook her head. Not directly, but someone acting on orders that benefited him. Victor was leveraged to the hilt back then. Bad investments, hostile takeovers looming. Lydia controlled 40% of the original family trust. If she died or divorced him, he lost voting control. Disappearance with a forged note suggesting abandonment? The trust defaulted to him as sole guardian of the minor heir you. The implications sank in like lead. Alexander stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. Far below, traffic crawled along Fifth Avenue like glowing ants. So, he had her, what, kidnapped? Brain damaged? Left to die on the streets. I don't think death was a plan, Elara said quietly. Too many questions. Better for her to simply cease to exist as Lydia Voss. But something went wrong. She escaped the facility, or was released too soon. Ended up wandering. By the time I found her a decade later in a Brooklyn shelter, she had survived by sheer will. No ID, no memory, but an instinct that someone was still looking for her, to finish the job. Lydia reached out, touching Alexander's sleeve as he passed. I never stopped feeling you, she said, voice breaking. Even when I didn't know your name, I carried this ache, like part of me was missing. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands. They were rough, scarred from years of hardship, but the shape of her fingers was achingly familiar from childhood memories. I look for you, he said fiercely. Private investigators across 3 continents. I never believed you left willingly. Elara's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen and tensed. Another anonymous number. Coordinates: 40.7128 degrees north, 74.0060 degrees west, and a single line. Come alone or she pays. She deleted it quickly, but not before Alexander noticed. What is it? Nothing. She lied smoothly. Spam. He wasn't convinced, but the moment with Lydia was too fragile to shatter yet. Instead, he stood and addressed his voice assistant. Aurora, prepare the guest suite on the east wing. Fresh clothes, toiletries, whatever is needed. And call Dr. Harlan. Tell him it's an emergency house call. Triple his usual fee. The AI responded in calm tones, lights dimming subtly to accommodate the late hour. Lydia looked overwhelmed. I haven't slept in a real bed in... You will tonight, Alexander said firmly. And every night after, if you want. Elara interrupted gently. We should get a DNA test. Fast. Private lab. Tonight, if possible. Alexander nodded, already thinking it. I have a contact at Helix Genomics. They owe me favors. He pulled out his phone, firing off texts. While he coordinated, Elara moved closer to Lydia, murmuring reassurance. But her eyes kept flicking to the windows, to the shadows beyond the glass. The coordinates were City Hall. Someone wanted her there, now. An hour later, Dr. Harlan arrived, a discreet older man with a medical bag, and no questions asked beyond the basics. He drew blood from both Lydia and Alexander with practiced efficiency, sealed the kits, and promised rush results by morning. Alexander wired the payment before the doctor even reached the elevator. Lydia, exhausted, was led away by a quietly summoned female attendant to bathe and change. She paused at the hallway, looking back at Alexander with a timid smile that broke his heart all over again. When they were alone, Alexander poured 2 fingers of scotch and offered one to Elara. She declined. You're not telling me everything, he said, voice low. Elara met his gaze steadily. There's a reason I waited this long to bring her to you. Someone has been watching her, us, for months. Professionals. The text tonight wasn't the first. They know she's here now. Alexander's expression darkened. Then they'll have to get through me. It's not that simple. Elara hesitated, then pulled a small flash drive from her coat pocket. This contains everything I've gathered over 10 years. Documents, photos, offshore account trails, encrypted emails. Enough to reopen the case and put powerful people in prison. But it also paints a target on whoever possesses it. He took the drive, turning it over in his palm. Why give it to me now? Because you have resources I don't. Private security, lawyers who scare governments, access to systems I can only dream of. And because... She paused, emotion flickering across her face for the first time. Because Lydia deserved her son, not more running. Alexander slipped the drive into his pocket. Stay here tonight. Both of you. My security is the best money can buy. Biometrics. Exmo SAD team on rotation. Elara shook her head. I can't. There's something I have to do. Alone. He stepped closer, voice steel. If you walk out that door and disappear, I'll have every resource on the planet looking for you. Don't make me do that. For a moment they stood in tense silence, the fire popping softly behind them. Then Elara's shoulders sagged slightly. There's a contact I've been cultivating. An ex-employee of the shell company used that night. He reached out yesterday, finally ready to talk. But only to me, only tonight, only in person. If I don't show, he'll vanish forever. Alexander considered, then nodded once. You don't go alone. My driver, my security detail, unmarked car, no trace. You were a wire, non-negotiable. Elara opened her mouth to protest, but the look in his eyes stopped her. For the first time, she saw not just a billionaire, but the man who had clawed his way up from abandonment and loss. Fine, she relented, but they stay back. No interference unless I signal. 30 minutes later, Elara slipped out a service exit into a waiting black SUV. Alexander watched the feed from a security office. Every camera angle tracked, every microphone live. His team was invisible. Rooftop overwatch, plainclothes shadows blending into the night. The meet was set for a quiet bench near City Hall Park. Elara arrived early, heart hammering. Snow had begun to fall in fat, lazy flakes, blanketing the city in temporary silence. A figure emerged from the shadows, thin, nervous, wearing a knit cap pulled low. He sat at the far end of the bench, not looking at her. You're late, he muttered. I'm exactly on time, Elara replied calmly. Do you have it? He slid a small envelope across the bench, without touching her hand. Bank records. Transfers from Voss Industries to a private security firm the week Lydia disappeared. Signatures forged, but I was a junior accountant who processed them. I kept copies. Elara's pulse raced. This was a smoking gun. Why now, she asked. Because I'm dying, he said simply. Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And because someone started asking questions again. Someone with reach. They came to my house last week. I figure if I'm dead anyway. He trailed off as headlights swept across the park. Too deliberate, too slow. A dark sedan cruised past, windows tinted black. The man bolted upright. They're here. You led them to me. No. Elara started, but he was already running, envelope forgotten in his panic. She snatched it and sprinted the opposite direction, snow muffling her footsteps. Gunfire cracked the night, silence rounds thudding into trees near her head. Alexander's voice exploded in her earpiece. Elara, get down. Team moving in. Black-clad figures materialized from the shadows. His security engaging pursuers with ruthless efficiency. Tires screeched as the sedan accelerated away, but not before one of Alexander's men tagged it with a GPS beacon. Elara dubbed behind a stone monument, breath ragged, envelope clutched to her chest. Within seconds, strong arms pulled her into cover. Alexander's lead operative, a former Delta Force operator named Reyes. Package secure, Reyes barked into his comm, exfiltrating now. Back at the penthouse an hour later, Elara spread the documents across Alexander's desk under bright task lighting. The transfers were damning. Millions routed through Cayman accounts, final recipient of firm known for executive protection and asset recovery. But one name leapt out, handwritten in the margin of a routing slip. Harlan. Dr. Harlan. The same doctor who had just drawn their blood. Alexander stared at the page, face pale. He's been my personal physician for 15 years. My father's before me. Elara met his eyes grimly. Then he knows exactly who Lydia is. And he's had access to you, to both of you tonight. As if on cue, the intercom buzzed. Security feed showed Dr. Harlan in the lobby again, medical bag in hand, expression apologetic. "Mr. Voss." His voice crackled through the speaker. "Terribly sorry to disturb so late. I believe I left a vital instrument in the guest suite. May I retrieve it?" Alexander and Elara exchanged a look that chilled the air between them. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the room. Alexander pressed the intercom button slowly. "Come on up, Doctor. We'll be waiting." The elevator chimed softly, a deceptive melody in the charged silence. Dr. Harlan stepped out with his usual measured calm, silver hair impeccably groomed, the same reassuring smile he'd worn at Victor Voss's bedside in his final days. But tonight the smile didn't reach his eyes. In his left hand, he carried the medical bag. In his right, concealed until the doors closed behind him, a compact syringe glinted under the recessed lights. Alexander stood in the center of the living room, arms loose at his sides, every muscle coiled. Elara flanked him to the left, the envelope of bank records still clutched like a talisman. Reyes and two of his operatives emerged silently from the shadows of the hallway, forming a quiet semicircle. The fire had dyed embers, casting the room in a blood-orange glow that made Harlan's face look suddenly older, hollowed by secrets too heavy to carry. "Alexander," Harlan began, voice smooth as ever, "I truly only need the forgotten hemostat. It's sterile, irreplaceable." "Stop," Alexander said quietly. The single word carried the weight of 20 lost years. "We know about the transfers. We know about the clinic in Connecticut. We know you signed the discharge papers that sent my mother into oblivion." Harlan's smile flickered, then steadied. "You're distraught, finding her after all this time. It's natural to grasp for conspiracies." Elara stepped forward, holding up the routing slip with his handwritten notation visible. "This is your handwriting. Doctor, you authorized a payment to the firm that staged the abduction. You treated the head injury yourself. You kept her sedated long enough for the amnesia to set in permanently. Or so you thought." For the first time, Harlan's composure cracked. His gaze darted to the windows, to the operatives now blocking every exit. "Victor was drowning," he said, almost pleading. "The company, the debts. Lydia's trust was the only lifeline. She was going to divorce him, take you with her. He would have lost everything. I stabilized the situation." "Stabilize," Alexander repeated, the word tasting like ash. "You erased my mother." Harlan's fingers tightened on the syringe. "I came tonight to finish stabilizing it. One overdose in the guest suite. Tragic relapse of a homeless woman with no identity. You grieve. You move on. The empire stays intact. No loose ends." He lunged with surprising speed for a man in his 70s, aiming the needle at Alexander's neck. But Reyes was faster. A single suppressed shot cracked the air. Harlan's leg buckled, the syringe clattering across marble. He collapsed with a cry, clutching his thigh as blood pooled dark and swift. Alexander didn't move to help him. Instead, he walked slowly forward and crouched, eye level with the man who had been family physician, confidant, betrayer. "You will live long enough to confess," he said, voice low and lethal. "Every detail, every account, every name. And then you will rot in a cell where money can't reach." Harlan's defiance crumbled into something small and pathetic. "It wasn't just me," he gasped. "Board members, silent partners, they all profited when Lydia vanished." "Then they'll join you," Alexander promised. Within hours, the penthouse became a fortress of controlled chaos. Private forensic teams swept in. Lawyers on retainer drafted ironclad statements, and federal agents, summoned through back channels Alexander had cultivated for years, arrived to take Harlan into custody. The doctor's confessions poured out under the threat of bleeding out. Names, dates, offshore havens, everything. By dawn, the DNA results confirmed what every heartbeat already knew. Lydia Voss was alive, and she was home. In the weeks that followed, the scandal erupted across every headline on Earth. Voss Industries stock dipped, then surged as Alexander ruthlessly purged the board, redirecting billions into restitution funds for families fractured by corporate greed. Harlan and his co-conspirators faced trials that gripped the nation, but the world's attention soon shifted to something far more luminous. Lydia's recovery was nothing short of miraculous, with the best neurologist, therapists, and, most importantly, her son's unwavering presence. Fragments of memory returned like spring blossoms after the longest winter. She remembered baking cookies with little Alex on rainy afternoons. She remembered the lullabies she sang every night. She remembered the terror of that final evening, the blow to her head, the clinical white room where Harlan's voice had promised, "This will all be over soon." But more than the pain, she remembered love. And love, it turned out, was the strongest medicine of all. Alexander sold the cold penthouse and bought a sunlit estate in the Hudson Valley, rolling hills, wildflower meadows, a kitchen big enough for messy family breakfasts. He stepped back from daily operations, delegating to trusted lieutenants, choosing mornings with his mother over boardrooms. They planted a lavender garden together, the scent wrapping around them like the hugs they had missed for 2 decades. Elara, who had lived so long in shadows, found herself welcomed into the light. Alexander offered her a foundation directorship, unlimited resources to find and shelter the disappeared, the forgotten, the ones the system failed. She accepted, but only on the condition that she could keep her tiny apartment in Brooklyn, a reminder never to grow too comfortable. One golden autumn afternoon the following year, the estate hosted a gathering the tabloids dubbed the reunion of a century. Lydia, radiant in a simple emerald dress that matched her eyes, stood on the terrace beside Alexander. Her hair had regained its auburn shine, her posture the quiet grace the world had once adored. Cameras flashed, but she only had eyes for the people who mattered. Alexander raised a glass of sparkling cider. Lydia still shied from alcohol, and addressed the small crowd of genuine friends. Staff would become family, and Elara standing proudly at their side. 20 years ago, he said, voice steady yet thick with emotion, someone tried to tear my world apart. They nearly succeeded. But love, stubborn, fierce, impossible love, refused to let go. It hid in the heart of a homeless woman who never stopped carrying her son's ache. It burned in a journalist who refused to abandon the truth. And it lived in me, even when I didn't know it. He turned to Lydia, tears shining unashamed. "Mom, I found you again because you never truly left me. Welcome home, forever." Lydia pulled him into an embrace that the cameras captured and the world would never forget. A mother and son, silhouettes against the setting sun, whole at last. Later, as guests drifted through lantern-lit gardens and laughter rose like music, Elara found Alexander on the stone bridge over the koi pond. "You rebuilt everything," she said softly. He shook his head, watching fireflies dance above the water. "No, I just stopped running from what was broken. You and Mom, you gave me the courage to stand still long enough to heal." She smiled, the guarded expression finally gone. "And you gave us a future we never dared dream." In the distance, Lydia's laughter rang out as she danced barefoot on the grass with a gaggle of rescued shelter dogs Alexander had adopted in her honor. The sound was pure joy, unfiltered, the kind that makes strangers believe in miracles again.